rockets that will ultimately connect cold fish to a warming planet.
In the world of science fiction, there are many ideas about what a star-killer machine might be like. Strangely enough, it's as run-of-the-mill as something as iron.
The devastating effects of global warming may be much more imminent than most people realize. Hidden at the bottom of the ocean is a little-known factor that could accelerate the whole process: massive deposits of frozen methane, a potent greenhouse gas.
The amount of methane in the ocean is much larger than the amount of methane and CO2 that we can get from fossil fuels.
If the ocean gets warm enough, the methane will defrost and rise from the ocean into the atmosphere. Global warming will suddenly get a steroid injection. If that happens, we will be past the tipping point. Colossal hurricanes would hammer the oceans would become too hot to support much life. Droughts, forest fires, and famine would rage across the continents. Florida would be gone, completely swallowed by the rising ocean, as well as hundreds of cities all around the world.
Across an ocean of grief. We have
bottles that are going to be around.
Gross, sun-baked plastic.
To make these hard, clear plastic called pulps, there is actually
Patch. Now, kind of with the advent of plastics, it does have estimated as like the size of Texas. There's a lot of what sounds...
Until a year ago, when fishermen reported sick fish with cloudy eyes, rashes, eroded fins and sores. Dependent research, funded by donations from the public and the seafood industry, working with fishermen to try and figure out what was happening.
Increased intensities of parasitic infection.
He's helping Matt investigate a disease in mud crabs called rust spot that ulcerates their shells.
This little orange spot here is what is unique as a disease to the crabs in Gladstone Harbour, and that becomes a weak spot, and bacteria like to invade weak spots. When crabs get increased rates of exposure to metals like copper and zinc, their shell doesn't reform properly. And so after they've molted, they don't end up with a nice hard shell to protect themselves. They end up with these deformed shells. It progresses in many of the crabs to actually go right through the shell.
This disease was first studied by Leone back in 1998.
competition with us. But perhaps the most bizarre consequence of overfishing is being uncovered on a remote shore in southwest Africa. It's a story with surprising twists and turns that will ultimately connect cold fish to a warming planet. It began with foul smells emanating from the sea. Locals called it a sulfur event.
Some days I'd arrive at work and the whole building was filled with this stench. It smells like rotten eggs in their most rotten state.
And then, like a biblical plague, hordes of fish would appear, dying on the shore.
I remember days that we went to the beaches and there was like tons of fish washed out on the beaches.
Every conceivable type of fish came out by the tons and tons and tons. A lot of fish were still alive. We never knew there was so much fish in the sea.
And now so much dead fish. It was a shocking spectacle. They compared data images corresponding to past sulfide events. As suspected, the satellites were detecting sudden changes in ocean color that matched eyewitness accounts. It's a series of eruptions. And these back-to-back events are expanding out of control, growing larger than anybody ever suspected. What were once thought to be small local phenomena now appeared to cover thousands of square miles. Andrew Bakken was now obsessed with the remaining open questions. How did the eruptions get so big? And what triggered them in the first place? At this point, you might be scratching your head and wondering, what does this have to do with fishing? Good question. The only fish we've seen in this story were dying in droves on a beach. Well, fish, it turns out, are players in this drama, and very lively ones. Or at least they were until a few years ago. Namibia's fisheries used to be among the richest in the world. But by the 1970s, most stocks were nearly wiped out by foreign fleets.
It's not 100 million individuals, it's 100 billion individual fish. You can't get 1 million tons of fish anymore out of this system.
Bakken thinks sardines once played a key role in keeping the lid on the deep-sea explosions. They were one of the main fish that could hold their own in the rough currents, where by gorging on phytoplankton, they decreased the source of sediment gases. With the sardine numbers down, he reasons the eruptions could increase in the future. This could be bad news. More explosions could threaten the government's efforts to rebuild the sardine stocks. The eruptions already extend into nursery grounds where they kill young fish and larvae. Bakken and his colleagues have boldly proposed that the eruptions may be adding to global warming. The methane released in the eruptions is, like carbon dioxide, a heat-trapping gas.
When you get eruptions of methane gas the size of the state of New Jersey, you are putting an enormous amount of a very potent greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. Sometimes we lose more than the fish that we take out of the ocean.
Could the massive removal of fish really have an effect on the climate system? Andrew Bakken thinks so, and he believes the climate is just the beginning. Who knows what other forces might be unleashed?
We're going to find results that were far from what we expected. Certainly, this example shows us how fishing can contribute to global warming.
Their recipe for success was simple. Grow additional foods right alongside the salmon, kelp and mussels. Their pitch? It would be good both for the bottom line and the surrounding habitats. But executives don't usually like to rock the boat. They showed that both kelp and the mussels grow faster near salmon pens, and that they have potential to absorb 40% of the waste from the water.
The things that are happening around the planet. We're going to cover different technologies. Like I've said over and over again on this website, though, we're not going to go into grave details of the technologies that we've come up with. As soon as we get the funding together, then we're going to release more of the technology. But as it sits right now, we're just trying to show where we're planning to use the technology and what we're planning to do with it, and a little bit of how, if we had the funding we need, we would be able to completely change the way things are happening. Continuously there's mysteries happening around the world, and the news organizations are going, oh my goodness, it's magical, or the end of the world, or whatever fictional thing they want to come up with. But there's logical science behind almost everything out there. Okay, so let's just dive right in. All over the planet we have birds, animals of any kind. Please Google this, look it up, research it for yourself. There is a reactionary state to everything that takes place. A fish eats something. Because that fish eats something, it keeps its number in small amount. It being there allows the fish to have something to eat, which is great. But if there's less fish and these other microbes or whatever they are decide to multiply, they can completely mess up the system that we're living in.
Methane release, North America, State of California, Santa Monica Bay. It's the 4th of March, 2013. The authorities say a foul odour that spurred calls to fire departments throughout the city on Sunday is possibly the result of a large release of methane in the Santa Monica Bay. Santa Monica Fire said in a department statement that they believe the strong odour was caused by a naturally occurring methane leak below the ocean floor. This morning there was a large release of natural ocean floor methane released in the Santa Monica Bay, the statement said. This methane is not toxic and dissipates quickly. Sam Atwood, a spokesman for the Air Quality Management District, AQMD, said his agency has not confirmed that theory. Brian Humphrey, a spokesman for the Los Angeles Fire Department, a spokesman for the Los Angeles City Fire Department, said the odour was noted inland from the Santa Monica Bay. Last September, a widespread sulphurous stench that blanketed parts of the Southland was apparently traced back to a biological occurrence on the landlocked Salton Sea. Thanks, YouTube.
It's more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas, but in fact that's over a 100-year time horizon. Over a 10-year time horizon, it's over 100 times more potent. So the magnitude of this cannot be overstated, and the reservoir that's releasing in the East Siberian Shelf of the Arctic is massive, and it has the potential to extinguish life on Earth. That, prior to making this call, and the devastation is cataclysmic. And so now you have these forests that were the lungs of the planet that were a carbon sink that absorb carbon. Now they are a carbon source. They're emitting carbon because they are dying. Well, it does have enough moisture. It is precipitating, and there's sea ice forming, but that doesn't mean it's getting colder. It's not getting colder. And in the case of the Arctic ice cap, it almost completely imploded this year. Media is not covering this. During most of the melt season, the Arctic ice cap was losing 100,000 square kilometers of surface area a day. Near the end of the ice season, the melt season, it was 130,000 square kilometers a day. It's not expected to last more than 2 or 3 more years. No ice. Again, back to the methane. Instead of the surface of the ice reflecting 90% of the sun's thermal energy, now the sea absorbs 90+% of that thermal energy. So add that increased absorption of sunlight from the open seawater, add the ocean currents that are now delivering warm water, add the increased thermal energy from the sun, from the shredded ozone. Bad mix, bad combination. Methane releases, causes heating, more ice melt, more absorption, positive feedback loop. Very, very clear, easy to understand.
And I hope you stick with it. We're going to take and break this up over many videos so that you don't completely get bored with the subject. But I hope you keep coming back and really get to explore this. Please become a subscriber, and there will be petitions that are going to be available for signing. And email us, comment, everything you can. Get involved as much as you can, please. We're going to try to set up things to where we'll get the funding that we need so we can just really get this off the ground. Thank you for your time. Thank you for paying attention, and truly hope you enjoy this.
Save our planet. Warming Arctic Ocean could result in devastating methane release. US researchers now estimate climate change is accelerating the likely melt of frozen deep-sea methane hydrates, leading to the potential discharge of an overwhelming 16,000 metric tons of methane annually. Although the methane would initially be consumed by marine microbes, these would release CO2 with a resulting imbalance that could result in numerous dead zones, where the water would lose as much as 95% of its life-sustaining oxygen. In addition, the microbial production of CO2 would increase ocean acidity, jeopardizing the survival of many species and disrupting marine ecosystems.
As a further side effect, key nutrients such as nitrate, copper, and iron that are useful to organisms would also be depleted due to the activity of the microbes. Experts have detected large seafloor methane stores beneath waters throughout the Arctic as well as in the North Pacific Oceans, with some lakes and seas already showing the bubbling of methane plumes and similar microbial processes. Study co-author Dr. Scott M. Elliott, a marine biogeochemist at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, USA, stated, "This will be a truly big environmental pollution problem in the next few decades. This problem is not going to go away."